Poster. It's really funny.
Remember to pay. If you don't want to pay, you don't have to.
There's two sides.
No. No, almost.
Whatever you want. Is it water?
Oh, my sunburn. Just okay. Look at how my hand on this side, it's like a piece of bread. Just toasted on one side. My nose. That one's okay. It's kind of cute. It's like, okay, this one's just. What kind of shirt was I wearing?
Video, music, art.
Yeah?
I watched it before.
You've seen that one before?
No sé cuándo fuimos.
Little boy there named Oliver. Oliver.
It is so hot. Like, no, not even, but like, hello, I'm Pato. Been a minute since I think I talked about books recently, but very inconsistent year, like wrap up wise in terms of like month to month what I was doing. So I have like 5 months of like backlog things that I want to talk about, but I don't know, it's just stressing me out. So I'm kind of just erasing the first half of the year. And just doing a pseudo mid-year freakout tag, which is like this book list of questions of like highlights and lowlights from the year. But turns out I don't think I'm gonna be able to do it because, just a quick aside, I haven't been doing that good lately, and a side effect of that is that my memory has been really weird. And I just like can't remember big gaps of time or like anything like over a month. Anyways, to be like super downer or whatever, but just literally I can't answer the questions because I don't remember like the last 4 months. What I do remember is the last month of books I've read, so I have a pile of books that I will kind of get through, and then maybe that'll jog my memory of some standouts. Yeah, where to go from here? Recently became unemployed, which not loving that. Hard to find anywhere hiring, and the amount of free time that I have now has led to me like using the internet for the first time in a minute, and I'm really disliking how it's making me feel and like the pattern of using it. At this point it's like intentionless, where it's just like opening it to be served something to like distract myself or like have on in the background while I look for something better, just ad nauseum. Yeah, really don't like that. I've been trying to find ways to like ground myself and like be present in the moment, whether it's taking like videos throughout the day to have like reference points of like I went here, I did this, like kind of jogging my memory. I also started keeping a diary and writing down what I did every day, writing on a calendar to try and, I don't know, anyways. Books, it turns out, are a good way to like be forcibly in the moment. So I've been reading a lot. Unfortunately, I don't really remember that many of the things I've read. All I know is that I have been like a perpetual motion machine of reading. So here's some books. Sorry for the long intro. Yeah. Okay, before the books, actually, life-wise, like 2 weeks ago, I went out to Louisiana for a bit. Because I was like freshly unemployed and I was like, what else do I have to do? My parents came to visit me for my birthday and then just offered for me to come back with them. So I did. Really small town. I remember on like the first day I looked up on TripAdvisor things to do, and number 10 was going to Walmart. So it was like the country. Really slow living, which helped a lot. I feel like I've been very overstimulated, and so just removing like all the options and just relying on the books that I brought with me helped kind of like refocus, and then that is where I'll start talking about the books. So the entire trip I feel like was fueled by coincidences, where the things that I was reading would then apply to like what I did that day in like really odd ways that I was enjoying a bunch. So I will kind of focus on the coincidence aspect instead of like the plot aspect, because that ended up mattering more to me than like the content of the book. I will start with this one, I guess. Briefly, I will talk about this David Foster Wallace book of short stories. Aside, I guess, I'm trying to find a book of his that I like, because I like his interviews and I like his essays. Short stories have not been it so far. It feels like he writes with so much constraint on himself that it's like a punishment, where it's like, how can I write about the most boring scenario possible and try and make it interesting? And like, by pushing through like the handicap that he's setting on himself, there's like something happening, I guess. But yeah, like excruciatingly slow, interesting writing. Anyways, coincidence number one was right before I left, I watched the movie Columbus, and one of the stories is set in Columbus, and so I was like, whoa, that's cool, neat. And continuing from there, I guess I'll mention this one, The Accidental by Ali Smith. Didn't finish this one, didn't end up sticking with it, but the plot centers around this girl who goes with her parents to like a middle of nowhere town in the country during the summer, and I was like, that's so me. So coincidence number two, kind of. Then these were like the highlights of reading, and kind of like what kicked off me paying attention or like looking out for the relationships between books, because seemingly unrelated, but they are like talking to each other basically, and I was just like jumping chapter to chapter back and forth and loving it. So first book is Field Guide to Getting Lost by Rebecca Solnit, which is this like nonfiction short story / like essay collection, kind of just like vignettes about different aspects of loss. And then this book, what is it called? When We Cease to Understand the World, by Benjamin Labitut, and it is about, it's also nonfiction, but it's like semi-exaggerated or like fictionalized accounts of the lives of mathematicians, and kind of just the history of science and how different figures overlap with each other, and just kind of digging deeper into their lives. And the first story of both, that's upside down, some of the coincidences, I wrote them down, so maybe I'll just refer to this. So the idea of loss versus gain, obviously in like terms of Field Guide to Getting Lost, exploring like loss as a word, as like the different meanings it can undertake. The big one is grief, and so the idea of like losing something, whether it's like lack of identity, like in the terms of grief. And then this talked about, I forgot like every name in here already, but it's something like, I'm not gonna try. It's like this dude who invented, chapter one's about, and this is so rambly, I'm sorry y'all. Chapter one's about like chemical warfare, and the dude who like invented chlorine gas also invented, or like had something to do with like nitrogen, which then influenced like all of farming forever. And so he's like simultaneously responsible for the loss of like a bunch of lives because of chemical warfare, and then also like the gain of like so much like produce and agriculture, and like the duplicity of like loss versus gain, which is also talked about in Field Guide to Getting Lost. And then there's that line from Past Lives where it's like, you gain something by leaving too, which is kind of like a through line of what she's talking about, where she's like, I don't know, the idea that you gain something by losing something, and what that is, a little abstract. But another similarity was the color blue. Second chapter of this is called The Blue of Distance, and it talks about kind of like the loss of vision, or like the loss of borders involved with horizon lines, and then it talks about paintings, and when you paint them you usually use the color blue, how like light waves, blue is like the yada yada science, blah blah blah. Talking about blue a lot. And then with the chemical warfare chapter, it talks about cyanide and how it was discovered through trying to like invent a new paint or something, like the cyan blue color. And then they both books start talking about like Alan Turing, because one perspective was like he committed suicide by eating an apple injected with cyanide, and then the other was like his like queer experience and some like decoding thing. I'm already kind of forgetting parts of it, but it was just really interesting that they would both talk about the same person, like the same concept of like Prussian blue, despite having like completely different intentions behind mentioning it. And then that night I watched the movie Black Narcissus, which is like a Powell and Pressburger movie from like the 50s. There's a ton of paintings as backgrounds, and so immediately saw an example of like blue horizon lines representing distance, Prussian blue, and I was just like, that's kind of crazy. Earlier that day or the next day or something, but like immediately following that, I went to a museum. This book mentioned the Mississippi River and like human-made trails and pathways, like off of like a literal pathway, like shortcuts, and how people like manipulated the Mississippi River. I'm spending a lot of time talking about these books, but there are so many coincidences. Long story short, Mississippi River, cyanotype prints, which are like blue and white prints. I went to a museum directly right by the Mississippi River that had cyanotypes on display, and I was just like, something is happening. That day I found this song in my Discover Weekly called Blue Shit by Micah Levy, who was a part of, so blue again, but who was a part of this band Good, Bad, Happy, Sad, which was really into already, and I was like, oh, cool connection. Turns out Micah Levy made the soundtrack for Under the Skin, which is a movie that I just saw. It was like a Jonathan Glazer movie, and I really like it, like a lot. I had just set it to my favorite, like in my favorites on Letterboxd, and then I don't know, just so many different connections. Turns out Micah Levy was there the whole time. Okay, I'll stop there. You get the idea. There are a lot of connections and a lot of coincidences and a lot of cool, awesome stuff. I really liked both of these books. I'm still only halfway through the Rebecca Solnit one. I went on to finish the When We Cease to Understand the World. Really liked this book. A really pleasant surprise. If you told me that I was going to read a book about like the history of mathematicians, I would have been like, but I actually really liked it, like a lot. Another like kind of boy book is Werner Herzog's ugly ass memoir. Barely, kind of still at like the starting line of this. I've read like maybe 30 pages, but he as a person I just find really cool, and someone I follow posted this and gave it like 5 stars. It was like Surreal Station on Instagram. So I was like, okay, word. Because I just watched the movie documentary thing, Grizzly Man, and I found it really endearing, and I don't know, just like a very delicate portrayal of someone's life that was trying to not like cast judgment or like have like a bias in being like a very objective documentary, and sharing like a really interesting story about this person who just devoted their life to living alongside grizzly bears, and they like filmed their own like pseudo documentary about it, and just kind of exploring his life and the footage. And anyways, really liked it. The kind of musing on like building an identity around something and like committing to something despite knowing it will kill you eventually. There's something like poetic and easy to like romanticize about like dying for art in like a literal sense. I don't know. I just was really moved by it, and so I wanted to kind of engage with more of his work. He also has a documentary that is about the same couple. Something Kraft is their last name, but they were a couple of volcanologists. There's a movie called Fire of Love, narrated by Miranda July that I really liked. Kind of like a love story centering around like them meeting and exploring volcanoes together. And I believe that they also passed away to volcanoes, like the same idea of like devoting your life to something so dangerous and like self-fulfilling. But there's a documentary that Werner Herzog also made about the same couple, so I would love to see like a super different like artistic vision. Fire of Love is a little bit like twee and like definitely like leans into like the romantic aspect, and I have a feeling that he will not. Anyways, speaking of like romanticizing stuff, I figured while I was going to be out in nature that I should read some Mary Oliver. So Blue Horses was what I picked, and it was a good choice. I would just kind of like pick and choose, read a poem every now and then. They're really short, obviously, but yeah, I like them. Not too much to say. I think it helps like being surrounded by the natural life. I also, in terms of art, wanted to read something about Adrienne Rich, who I'm really interested by. I also have her poetry collections. I don't think I got what I wanted to out of this, but I want to revisit. I think it's called like, it's definitely not called that. I was going to say like Politics and Prose. That's not right. Something about art and politics intersecting. I own it. Anyways, I want to read something by them. But it's because I was really interested in kind of like art as a concept. This was before I came back and made that like video essay, like the last video, about art. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to like, read it at the time. It's cool. That video, by the way, shout out. I don't know why I said shout out, but I think it's cool that like it did so well. Did not expect it to. But yeah, I think it's cool, reassuring, kind of adds a bit of pressure, knowing that there's like new faces watching me. Yeah, I don't really make videos like that very often, so sorry to anyone expecting more. But hopefully, you know, something else, like another subject, will feel like intrinsic and necessary to talk about. Partly like for me just making it, and then also the fact that so many people said that it was helpful to them in some way, or that they liked it, was really cool. Yeah. Came back from that trip and kept reading. I've talked about these already. The books that I'm like juggling right now are Sirens and Muses. That's definitely not in focus. Anyways, this is like a super new release, very like litfic, current. Well, not super new. I think it came out like 2022, but new enough that it's not at my library. And despite waiting a year, it's still not. So I ended up buying it new, which I've not done maybe ever. But is it worth $18? I don't know. I'm liking it though. This makes it sound like the book is like bad, but that's just a lot of money to spend on a book, especially like Kindle, Libby, library age. But you know, drastic times. Could not find this. I wanted to read it, and I'm liking it. It's a polyphonic novel, so like taking on the perspective of different voices, with not that much like continuity, or like direct relation. Think like N.W. by Zadie Smith or The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty. Also low-key, think something by Banana Yoshimoto. Not in terms of content at all. There's no like surrealism or anything like that. But one like motif or like thing that what is their name? Antonia Angress is doing is using like the chapter space, like the blank whatever. What word am I trying to use? I don't know. Anyways, the space between chapters, like a lot of time will pass, and that is something that Banana Yoshimoto did in the second book, like the one that's like appended at the end of Kitchen, I think, like Moonlight something. I was gonna say Moonlight Rendezvous, but that's definitely not it. That's a song by the Other People Place. Yeah, anyways, that sort of like end of chapter 1, you know, chapter 2 is like just talking about life. Like 2 weeks later is like, oh, these characters feel like so much more real and fleshed out because they exist literally like away from the page. Like they're existing off screen, and you'll like come and check back in, and the stakes are different. You can kind of like look and like abscond whatever decision that they've made, because plot wise this is about 4 different people who all were at an art school in like 2010, which is crazy that 2010 is like now like a period piece. But early internet age, Occupy Wall Street, art school, messy, sapphic, talking about like class and like identity and privilege, in terms of like how different people got to that art school, art as like a backdrop to their different lives all like intersecting without directly meeting each other or like confronting each other. But yeah, really drastic, kind of like, I don't know, it's messy but it's fun, it's lighthearted. I am like 200 something pages into it. I'm enjoying it. Thumbs up. And then I am like 80 pages into The Pisces by Melissa Broder. Liking it as well, like another fun book. I feel like I need to like balance out like the mental fortitude test that I was undertaking by reading a book about math and science for that long. Like so much nonfiction back to back. Now I'm like, I want my brain to melt, and this is doing it for me. So this is not The Pisces. This is a book I started today because of my ire at the internet. I wanted to read like an internet novel. Something kind of like I'm a fan, I guess, is what I'm looking for, but just like poking fun at and like satirizing internet culture, and I don't know, maybe reading it in like an interesting perspective could be cool. I'm like 2 pages into this because what was I doing earlier? I don't remember. But The Pisces was another one. I'm like 60 pages into this one. That's mostly it. Book-wise, that's kind of all I remember. And I think I need to start using Goodreads again, just to like keep track of what I'm reading, because if not, it just kind of like goes into the ether, and I really can't remember like anything else that I read so far this year. So yeah, probably gonna get back on that. Speaking of Goodreads, the kind of yin to that yang is Letterboxd. I watched a couple movies. I started doing like color studies of like frames from a movie if I really liked it, which was cool. Kind of stopped doing that, but I should do it again. I have a couple from Aftersun, from Columbus, watched Ikiru. There's been a handful of movies. I would probably have to pull up like my letterbox and like go through like the diary to like check. I'll stop recording and I'll come back if I have like. Okay, so movie wise, in terms of reviews or like responses that I've had to a movie, I really liked rewatching Arrival and watching All of Us Strangers. They just kind of unearthed something, whether it was like a memory or just like emotional turmoil, but I had a really big like emotional response to watching both of those, and just had like a intentional or like well written review, I think, at least. I like what I wrote about both of them. In terms of watching movies, the ones I've enjoyed the most this year, couple highlights. Most recently was Rebels of the Neon God, Tsai Ling-myung movie. My second, I watched Goodbye Dragon Inn, liked it, didn't love it, but Rebels of the Neon God was just really cool. Columbus, I mentioned earlier, but really liked that movie. Was a rewatch, enjoyed it a lot more the second time around, and just made a really lasting impression, both visually but also tonally. There's just a lot going on that I really connected to. Aftersun was a really good movie. Yeah, I will be rewatching that many times to come. I feel like I'm forgetting one. I don't know. Taste of Cherry. I watched for the first time a couple months back. Really liked it. The Suspiria remake I thought was really cool, and Under the Skin, the Jonathan Glazer movie. All those I thought were really cool. Yeah, music-wise, what albums have come out? There was a new Jessica Pratt album. Super recently, there was a new Pig Baby album, who's like a vegan label mate. Thought it was cool. Vegan's new album was cool as well. I listened to it 2 days ago while I cooked dinner on vinyl. Pretty cool. Good moment. I probably took a video of that. What else? I Saw the TV Glow soundtrack by Alex G was really cool. I've listened to that a bunch. I have not seen the movie, sadly. I missed my chance to see it in theaters because I wanted to go to sleep early. There was like a 10 something p.m. showing, and I was like, I'll pass on that. I'll just go tomorrow. Turns out there would never be a showing ever again. Really bummed about that because I've only heard good things or seen good reviews of it from people I follow on Letterboxd. The James Blake Lil Yachty collab album was unexpected, but I liked it. I really like James Blake. The Chanel Beads album, amazing. I've been listening to a bunch of stuff, a lot of songs with bird noises. I made like a playlist to collect those. A lot of like space rock, like Duster adjacent, just like instrumental stuff like that. I just made a playlist today, so I'll probably put that somewhere. But yeah, that's what's up with me. A little update, short and sweet. Well, not that short, but sweet maybe. Anything else? Probably not. Okay, one more book. I forgot about this one, but The Years by Annie Ernaux. Really personal, really liked it. A little too personal at times, where it would just be referencing really niche things and became a little alienating because I just couldn't keep up with like random details. But the opening of this book I really enjoyed. I read this on my birthday, and the kind of mortality mixed with like the existential of like, oh, another year, went hand in hand. And yeah, it was a good time. The book opens with a bunch of details of her life that she'll miss when she's gone, and just reading like so many different things in quick succession, I found really endearing. Just like little tiny romanticized details, and it made me think about what my version of this book would look like, which was a really fun thought, like train of thought, and also reassuring because I only turned 24. I have a lot of living left to do, so it's nice to think that like if I was making my own version of this book, so many of the pages like would be blank. Like there's so much left to love in this life. Really cool. That's all the books and movies and stuff. One kind of thing to leave on is I would love it if you followed me on whatever platform you care about. Like if you're into the movie stuff or the book stuff or the life stuff, like just kind of go wherever. But I don't love making these like wrap-up videos that much. Kind of want to lean further into like the video essay stuff, like the last video I made. I really enjoyed making, and yeah, the problem is that they're a little more time consuming and also depend on like having something worth sharing or like worth caring about. So there would be like fewer and further in between. So if you were just on whatever platform you care about, I would feel better knowing like anyone who wants to know is finding out what I'm up to. Yeah, I'll still make stuff on here, but I just want like the spaces to feel distinct so that it's not just me like repeating posts that I've made on here. Yeah, thanks for watching this video. I don't know when the next one will be, but we'll see you in that one. Bye bye.